Hi everyone. Thanks so much for joining today's webinar. My name's Nikki Malahy and I'll go ahead and get things kicked off. Today's session is around making the switch from Cardiolog on-premise to software as a service on the cloud. The goal of this presentation is to keep you up to date and informed of some of the key benefits of moving to our SaaS solution and highlight some of the key main differences. A bit of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded, so if you want to share this with a colleague in the next few days, we'll go ahead and send you an email to everybody who's signed up with the recording as well. And you can also connect to us on Twitter with the Twitter handle @Cardiolog. And of course, if you have any questions, we'll leave some time towards the end of the webinar for questions. And you can also send us through the question box within the GoToWebinar panel. In regards to the agenda for today's webinar, we'll start out with a very short introduction. We'll then talk a little bit about why some of our customers are choosing SaaS and its advantages. Then my colleague Ruby will jump into an overview of Cardiolog Analytics SaaS, and then go on to present the Cardiolog Engage tool, where we'll learn a bit more about how we can leverage this to gain further insights and turn these insights into actions. And again, as I previously mentioned, if we have time, we'll be taking some Q&A, so please feel free to send your questions throughout the course of the presentation. Now, since you're already using Cardiolog Analytics, you'll know that our goal is to help our customers constantly improve SharePoint based on how it's being used. So there are three main pillars that we talk about. As you know, the first is to monitor, which is tracking the usage within SharePoint. The second is engaging users, asking them what their needs are, what their pain points are, and what's not working for them. And then finally, the most important pillar is enhance. So we want to make sure that we're constantly improving SharePoint based on these pillars. And the idea is to have actionable metrics which will allow us to constantly make SharePoint better for our users. A very common scenario that may resonate with you as well is that stakeholders and administrators from organizations approach us and want to know very specific facts, such as how can I determine my adoption levels at each step of the migration process? Or can we identify which content is not being accessed? What are users doing on the portal? What's the most popular search, for example? Or even where are my users coming from? What's the most popular content, and so forth. And we're then able to recommend very tailored metrics and analytics report to answer these important business questions, because at the end of the day, without having these vital pieces of information, organizations aren't making informed business decisions based upon actionable metrics. So on that note, Ruby, let's jump right on in. I'll hand this over to my colleague Ruby to get things kicked off. So over to you, Ruby.
Thanks, Nikki, and thanks everyone for joining today. Let's start by discussing some background around our SaaS solution. So the main question that you might be asking yourself is, of course, why SaaS? What are the benefits of moving from Cardiolog on-prem to Cardiolog SaaS? We can split the advantages of our SaaS solution into two main overarching groups. So first of all, we have all of the advantages that come with implementing a SaaS solution. And secondly, Cardiolog SaaS is fully integrated with Microsoft's Power BI. So now let's talk about what those advantages of implementing a SaaS solution actually are. So first of all, it entails a really quick and simple setup. To get started with Cardiolog SaaS, all you need to do is to install the add-in or WSP solution to the site collections that you want to track. So from that point, Cardiolog SaaS will start tracking and collecting data. So you don't need to install anything on-premise. You don't need to prepare servers or databases or run any installers. So it's a really quick and simple setup. Second, there's no infrastructure, licenses, or maintenance involved. Because everything is hosted on our end, you don't need to own any servers or licenses for Windows or SQL. We do all the hosting, and that means that you save a lot of time and resources when it comes to maintenance and version upgrades and updating and maintaining servers. Next here we have high availability. When you host a software on-prem, from time to time servers go down, or services might stop, or there might be network connection issues, and all of these things can cause problems with using the tool. This is a really crucial point when we're talking about an analytics tool, which is something that we really need to have high availability for so that we can be sure that the data is always being captured and we're not losing any valuable information. So because Cardiolog SaaS is hosted in Azure, we can guarantee high availability, meaning that you'll be able to collect data and get reports at all times. Now we have unlimited scaling options. If your traffic starts to increase, if you decide to track more sites, or if you see more and more users adopting the portal, you don't need to worry about scaling up servers or finding new servers. With SaaS, the solution grows with you, so you don't need to worry about increasing any infrastructure. A really important point here is that the solution is continuously updated and enhanced. Of course, we're constantly updating and adding new features to both our on-prem and SaaS solutions, but the important difference here is that with the SaaS solution, these updates are automatic, so the customer doesn't need to do anything to get those updates. So that means that customers receive those updates and enhancements a lot faster because there's no need for them to run an installer or do a version update. And lastly here, you can connect to your data anywhere. So if in your on-prem server you can only connect to it while you're in the office, in the intranet, because this is a SaaS solution, you can connect to it from anywhere, even from your mobile phone when you're on the go. So you can log in from anywhere you want. To give you some background about how this solution actually works, it's pretty similar to how our on-prem solution works with some slight differences. So if we take a look at this schematic overview here, in this first column, we have the data source. These are all the platforms that we can track using Cardiolog SaaS. To capture the data, we have two main methods. The first is with a JavaScript tracking code. This is a tracking code that we developed, and it allows us to capture information about users' behavior, like what pages they viewed, how much time they spent viewing each page, what links they clicked on, what they searched for, and so on. And we combine this information with data that we pull from these platforms here in column 1. And because our solution is built specifically for these platforms, we can pull very specific information that's only relevant to those platforms. So for example, when it comes to SharePoint, we have a lot of information about the portal content. So we generate the SharePoint tree structure, which you'll be familiar with already from SharePoint on-prem. So this portal tree structure allows you to filter and segment any report based on parts of the portal that you're interested in. Also, when we're looking at page views, we can pinpoint not only the URL of that page, but also what the title of the page is, who the owner of the page is, for example. And we can also aggregate data for an entire logical level of the portal, like a site or a library. This way, we can also see unused content. So because we map the entire contents of the portal, we're able to identify which content hasn't been viewed. We also have a lot of information about users, groups, and user attributes. And you can use this information in order to filter and segment any report to focus only on the users and groups that you're interested in, or to compare different segments. And finally, we have a lot of information about the social features in Yammer and SharePoint. So if you're interested in, if you're utilizing these features in your organization, these social features, it's really important to understand how employees are actually using those features and that functionality, and also to pinpoint employees that perhaps aren't using them. Up until this point, everything is very similar to the way that Cardiolog on-prem works. The main difference starts from this point. So here, when data is captured, it's sent to our service, which is hosted in Azure. This is where we process the information and prepare the actual analytics out of the raw data. Finally, for data visualization, we utilize Power BI. For those of you who might not be familiar, Power BI is a Microsoft platform for data visualization, which allows you to connect to different data sources, whether it's an Excel sheet or a database or a third-party application like Cardiolog SAS in this case. So it allows you to create reports really easily, and it has a very, very powerful data visualization capability that we'll see in a few moments. So now let's move on to the demo. Today we're going to cover a few key reports in Cardiolog Analytics SAS, and then we'll take a look at our engagement tools, and more specifically at Cardiolog Engage. So here we can see the Power BI interface, and we can already see some of the Cardiolog reports here. In Power BI, it's really easy to create and customize your own widgets and reports, but we've also created a set of pre-made reports to make it easier for our customers to get started and to make sure that they're getting the analytics they need, even if they're not exactly sure which metrics they need to measure in order to meet their goals. So we've built a set of over 30 dashboards, and these dashboards focus on the main goals that organizations using SharePoint and Yammer tend to have. So here along the bottom of the screen, we can see these different reports. And we have reports around things like adoption, engagement, improving usability, optimizing portal resources, collaboration, and more. And if we look at the report that we're viewing right now, this is the usage overview report, which is designed to give us a high-level overview of how the portal is being used. So here on the left, we have the portal tree filter. And this is very similar to the analysis center in Cardiolog on-prem. So this is a tree view here of the portal, including all the farms or SharePoint tenants that you're tracking and everything within them. So all of the site collections, subsites, lists, libraries, and then the actual items. So all the pages, documents, list items. Everything will appear here in the portal tree filter, and you can use this in order to filter any report to focus on the particular areas of the portal that you're actually interested in. So for example, if you want to get information about your entire portal, including all of your farms and all of your tenants, you can click on all here in the portal tree to see data for everything. But if you want to focus only on your SharePoint Online tenant, then you can select SharePoint Online. The same way, if you're a site owner and you want to get information specifically about your site, you can just click on your site from the portal tree filter and get the relevant information specifically for your site. Or maybe you want to focus on a specific list. If, for example, you have a particular list that you use in order to publish news articles, and you want to see how these news articles are doing, then you'll just click on the relevant list to see data only for the items in that list. Another type of filter that we have is based on the content type or the template in SharePoint. This is located here along the top. So if you want to focus only on documents or blog posts, for example, then you can just select the relevant item here, click on the relevant button to see information that's relevant to that content type. This button also includes custom content types that you've added to SharePoint. So if you have your own template for announcements, for example, and you want to see how those announcements are doing across the portal, no matter where they're published, you can just click on the announcements button and get the relevant information in your report. Now I want to look at this area of the report that's labeled content. Content is obviously something that's really important to our customers. They usually want to understand which areas of the portal are being used the most, which areas are most active, and which specific content items are the most used and the most valuable. You can get all of this information from this area of the report labeled content. So let's start with the chart here. So this chart is based on the portal tree structure. It allows you to drill down and see how usage data breaks down throughout the portal, starting from the top level of the portal and all the way down to the individual items. So let's take a look at how we can do that. So starting from our top level here called all, we can see that in total we had this amount of page views, just over 47,000, and this amount of unique users. So the light purple is showing us our unique users. So this is the total amount for our entire farm plus our SharePoint Online tenant. And if I then want to see how this data breaks down, I can just click on the drill down button here. And that takes us to the next level. And now I can see the breakdown between our SharePoint Online tenant and our SharePoint 2013 farm. This is especially useful during a migration. So if, for example, you're migrating to SharePoint Online, you can really easily get a very clear comparison here of the two environments to see if the new environment is being adopted as expected. And we can drill down further from here. If I want to see more information about my SharePoint Online tenant, we can just click on it and drill down. And this takes us to the next level. And here we can see all of the site collections within this SharePoint Online tenant. So this is showing us information about everything in this area of the portal tree here. And looking at this, we can really easily see which site collections are very active and are getting a lot of traffic. In this case, we can see that this is our most active site collection here. So let's drill down into it to see where the usage data comes from in this site collection. All right, so here we can see that we have a few subsites, but actually most of our traffic is coming from site lists here. So let's drill down into lists here. And here we have all the lists. And again, we can really easily understand which lists are more popular and how the usage data breaks down here. And actually, we can drill down even further. So let's take site pages here. And this takes us to the level of the actual items. So here we see the pages that are under this pages library. And we can see right away which pages are the most popular and which pages are being viewed the most by the most unique users. And we can see additional information just by hovering over each item. If we drill down into a specific site collection, we can see all the sub-sites under that site collection. And again, we can really easily understand which sub-sites are more active. And this basically shows us where the usage is coming from in different areas of the portal. So this is a really great way to compare different items within the same level of the portal, or to investigate how your usage data breaks down across the portal. And if you want to focus on specific items, you can do that in this table here. Because this is in Power BI, we can basically add any columns we want to any table. So to show you an example of some of the information you can find out about each content item, we can see things like page views and average duration. We can see the last time a page was viewed. And we can also use this information in order to identify not only the most viewed content items, but also the items that were viewed the least, or items that weren't viewed at all. And once we pinpoint those unpopular items, we can think about how we can position them better if those are things that are important. Or if it turns out that those things aren't relevant anymore, then maybe we can delete them and free up some space in the portal. And again, I can use the filters to find the specific information that I need here. So right now we can see the most viewed content items across the portal. But if I want to identify the most viewed documents from a specific site, I can click on the document button at the top and select the site that I'm interested in from the portal tree filter. So now I've filtered this report to show only documents from this specific site here. And maybe I want to see who viewed a particular item. Here in the table, I can see that this is my most viewed item. If I click on it, then I can cross-filter my report, meaning that I'm filtering this report by this specific content item. So you'll notice that all of the data just changed to reflect usage for this item here. So here on the right, under adoption, I can see which teams and departments viewed this item the most. So here it looks like the business team viewed this item the most, but the IT department didn't really use this item. I can also see this information for individual users. If I drill down here, I can see specific users, in this case in the IT department. And if I click on this document again, I can see which users viewed this item. This also works for sites and libraries. For example, if I want to see who viewed the news list, I can just click on that list to filter the whole dashboard by that list. So now I can see which teams viewed this list the most, and I can drill down to see which users viewed this list. If I want to see this the other way around, for example, if I want to see what content the marketing department viewed, I can just click on the marketing department here to filter the report by that department. So now at the top, I can see how many active users I had from the marketing department. I can see how many pages those users viewed, and I can also see how long they spent viewing those pages. And in the content chart, I can see which areas of the portal they viewed. And here in the content table, I can see the specific content items that were viewed by the marketing department. We can do the same thing for individual users. So if I drill down on a specific user, now I can see data just for this user, and I can see exactly what this user viewed, how many times they viewed items, and how long they spent viewing each item. Let's move on to the visitor adoption overview report here. Obviously, adoption tends to be a really major concern for any organization that's using SharePoint. And the big question for stakeholders is how can I engage users and encourage them to use the portal more productively and more efficiently? So we have several pre-made reports that focus on user adoption. And this particular report offers a high-level overview of adoption. And if we take this graph here, we can see how many users in SharePoint are active compared with how many are inactive. And here an active user is defined as a user who logged in at least once during the date range that we're looking at. Another important metric here is average depth of visit over here. This tells us the average number of pages per visit. If the number here that we're seeing is down around 1 or 2, then this would be indicative of a pretty low adoption and would be something that we'd want to investigate how to improve. And here we can see the average length of visit in minutes. So the average amount of time spent in the portal during a visit. Over here we have the percentage of single page visits. So how many visits to the portal contained only one page view. And underneath that we have bounce rate. In Cardiolog SAS, a bounce is defined as a visit that ended within 30 seconds. So this is going to show us the percentage of visits that lasted no more than 30 seconds. And in this chart here at the bottom, we see the average number of visits per user per week. So on average, the number of times each user logs into the portal each week. We can learn more about who the most and least active users and groups are here in this report over here. And here we have a breakdown according to department, where we can really easily pinpoint which departments have the highest rates of inactive users. So if I look at the sales department, which has a really high rate of inactive users, and I click on this, I can see a lot more information about this department. So up here I can see the number of inactive users. I can see the average depth of visit for the sales department. And how much time they spent during those visits. And in this chart here, we can see the users within the sales department, and I can easily identify the top users, and down the bottom, which users might be lagging behind. So when I scroll down, I can see the users who aren't very active. So if we want to provide some sort of training resources, we can focus our efforts where they're most needed rather than taking a blanket approach. And this information comes from SharePoint user profiles. So if you want to see this breakdown here by any other attribute like office or country or even custom attributes that you've added to SharePoint, you can do that simply by selecting the attribute that you want to see. So these adoption reports are really important in order to understand how users are using the portal and which users and departments are most and least active. And if you want to understand what users are actually doing within the portal, we can open up this usage types report here. This chart here gives us a breakdown between contributors, participants, viewers, inactive users, and then we have active users as well. So here, contributors are users who added new content. Participants are users who didn't add or create content, but they did interact with content, for example, by liking or replying. Viewers are users who didn't perform any of those actions, but they did view content. And inactive users are the users who didn't enter the portal at all. And then we have the total active users represented along this histogram here. And here in the bar graph, we can see this broken down by department. And again here, we can drill down into each of these departments. I'll take the marketing department to see who the actual users are who were active contributors, participants, and viewers, or inactive. Moving on to the usability category. Usability is something that's really important to be aware of, especially if you're trying to improve adoption and engagement. Enhancing user experiences in the portal is really crucial if you want to improve adoption. Of course, if the portal is easy to use and search works well and navigation is simple, and users are generally able to find relevant content fairly easily, then that does a lot to help improve adoption. On the other hand, low adoption and low engagement can be symptoms of inefficient search, a lack of relevant content, poor navigation pathways, and so on. When these sorts of problems occur in the portal, users tend to become frustrated and they don't really feel that the portal is useful or valuable to them. So instead, they tend to avoid using the portal when they can. So search is one of the most important elements when it comes to usability. A lot of users tend to use search as their preferred method of getting around the portal and finding the content that they need. So then if search isn't working well for them, then it's going to be really difficult for them to use the portal productively. Search is something that can be fairly easily optimized if we're measuring the right metrics, but it is something that requires consistent monitoring and enhancing. So here in this bar graph, we see the top search phrases across the portal or on a specific site. And already, this gives us a lot of insight into what our users are actually looking for and what's important to them. If I click on the top item here, let's take benefits. I can see more analytics around this benefits search phrase. So up the top, I can see how many times this phrase was searched. So I can also see how many unique users search this phrase. And already this can help us to understand how popular a search term is. If we see a lot of users searching for a specific app or link or document, we can save them a lot of time and hassle just by adding that item to a more visible location, like a home page or a navigation menu. We can also see the average number of results that were returned when searching this phrase. If the number of results was really low, we can check why that is. It could be that there's not enough relevant content around that search term, in which case we'll need to add that content. Or it could be that the content is actually there, but there may be some permissions issues, or the search schema may need to be optimized, or we might need to add more search queries. We can also see the average search result position. This is the average position of the results that were clicked on from the search results pages. So on average, did users click on the first result or the second result or the 10th result? So in this example, users clicked around the 10th or 11th result, meaning they had to go through 9 or 10 results before finding the relevant content. So that would be something that we'd want to improve on. And we can do that really easily by checking which search results users did actually click on, and then pushing those up in the search results page. And finally, we have the percentage of searches that led to a click on a search result. So this is a really important metric if we want to understand how well search is performing in general, or for a specific search phrase. Of course, if a user searches for something and then doesn't click on any result, we can assume that it's fairly likely that they didn't actually find any relevant results. So in this example, more than 50% of users who searched this term didn't click on any results, and presumably they weren't able to find anything relevant. So instead, they needed to change their search phrase, or they needed to try to find the relevant information in some other way. So now that we've seen a few of the pre-made reports, I want to take a look at how we can create our own reports in Cardiolog SaaS. By clicking on the Edit Report button here at the top, this takes me to my report in edit mode, where I can customize reports and add my own reports as well. So I want to go back to my usage overview report and edit that. Okay, so again, we click on Edit Report. So here, for example, if I want to see this breakdown here, and I want this to show me breakdown by office instead of department, I can just change this in the filters here. So I can select offices instead of department to show this breakdown by office. So that's how we can customize pre-made reports. But if you want to create your own reports, you can do that by clicking on the yellow plus sign here. And that adds a blank page or canvas, and then you can select whatever information you want to see in your report. So all of the information that was captured by Cardiolog is available here in fields. And you can simply select which fields you want to see in your report. So let's say we want to focus on our visitors. So we'll open up the visitors menu here and click on username to add that to our report. This adds a list of all the usernames that are available in my dataset, and now I can choose what sort of information I actually want to see about each user. So if I want to see their emails, for example, I can add user email. And that adds another column to this list with the email address of each user. And if I want to see information about their usage, I can open up the SharePoint usage menu at the top. And I'll go down to page views and add that to my list. And pull this out. I can add visits as well to find out how many times they've visited the portal. I can also add average duration and let's see when their last page view was. Pull this out again. So there are a lot of different metrics that I can choose from over here in the filters, depending on the information that I actually want to find out about these users. And each metric that I select is added to my table as an additional column. Here under visualizations, I can choose how I want to visualize this data. So instead of seeing this as a table, I can display it as a chart, or any of these other visualizations that are available here. And the cross-filtering capability that we saw in the pre-made reports is also available when you create your own reports. So for example, if I go to the geolocation menu here, and click on the geolocation hierarchy. That opens up a map. And now I can choose which information I want to see in this map. So I might want to see the number of visits for each geographical location. So let's add visits. And now I can drill down to see this information by country or by state. And find out which geographical locations are the most active. If I click on a specific location, that will cross-filter my report. So you can see now my bar graph is showing me information only about users from this specific location. And if I click on a user from the graph here, then my map is going to show me information about where that user logged in from. In general, we can use the map to show information about where the user's physically logged in from, so what their IP address was, or we can use this based on information from their SharePoint profiles. You can also utilize the drill down capability in reports that you create yourself. And drill down is a really great way to get deeper insights and sort of zoom in from the macro level to see the finer details of each of these metrics that we have available here. For example, if I go to visitor attributes and add attribute values, and now I'll select which values I want. I'll take departments. And now I see here all of the departments that I have available, and I can choose what sort of information I want to see about each department. So I'll go back to SharePoint usage, and I will add duration in minutes to this report to see how much time each department spent in the portal. And I'm going to display this as a chart. And I want to sort this by duration so that I can identify the top departments. So I'll go here and select sort by duration. So now I see all of the top departments, and I can pull this out a bit as well. Okay. And now I can add more layers to my chart so that I can drill down. So if I want to drill down from the department that we see here to see the active users within each of those departments, I can go to the visitors menu here and select username. And that adds another layer to my chart, and now I can drill down and see the users within each department. And I can add more layers. If I want to see exactly what each user viewed, for example, then I'll go down to the portal tree menu. And I'm going to add the tree URL. And that adds another layer. So now I can drill down and see exactly what each user actually viewed. So if I drill down on this top user here, I can see exactly which URLs this user viewed and which URLs she viewed the most. And if I want to see exactly when this user viewed each of these items, then I can open up the date menu and add date. And now I can drill down on each URL and see exactly when it was viewed by this user. There are a lot of options to choose from here. We might want to know where exactly this user logged in from when they viewed this particular URL at this time. So in that case, I can go down to geolocation hierarchy and add geolocation. And then I can see where this user logged in from. So I can see this user logged in from Boston. And if I also want to find out which device this user viewed this item from, I can open up the technology menu and add device details. And then I can drill down, and here I see that this user viewed this item from a PC. I might also want to know which browser she used, so I can add browser details as well. And here I see that she was using Chrome. So you can really add anything you want here to investigate your data and get more insights about your data. So this really offers a huge amount of flexibility if you have your own specific requirements and you want to build your own dashboards and reports. Another really great feature in Power BI is the Ask a Question feature. So with this feature, we can simply type a question in natural language into this Ask a Question bar here, and we'll receive a visualization as an answer. So for example, if I want to find out about page views, I can type how many page views. and this will show me a number card with the total number of page views in my portal. But I can also ask more specific questions. So I can ask how many page views in April, if I want to know how many page views there were in April. Or I can ask about page views by month, if I want to see a breakdown of page views by month. And even here, I still have the option to choose how I want to visualize this data. So I might want to see this as, let's say, a line graph instead of a bar graph, and I can do that really easily. I can also combine different metrics here. So if I ask about page views by state, let's say, then I see a map. This map will open up. And maybe I also want to see this by browser as well. So I can add by browser. So now I can see the different browsers on top of the map. So this is a great way to find out information really quickly and easily without having to build any reports or without having much know-how in Power BI. Now I want to move on and have a look at our engagement tools. Everything that we've seen so far in this session was really focused on understanding how the portal is being used and what we can do to improve it. And our goal at Intlock is to provide what we like to call actionable metrics. So we really work to create reports that will give you insights and information that you can use in order to take action and make improvements. And that action might be something like providing training to inactive users, or creating a group for your top contributors to get feedback from them, or getting rid of unused content, or optimizing search, and so on. But with Cardiolog Engage, we really want to take this further beyond analytics and provide a way or a platform for you to take some kind of action based on your analytics. Cardiolog Engage is based on campaigns that you run in your portal to further engage your users. And everything here is based on the information captured by Cardiolog SAS. So we have a lot of information about users, like which department they're coming from, which office, and their usage habits, like what time they usually log into the portal, what sites they usually visit, how much time they tend to spend on each page, and what they're doing at every moment that they spend in the portal. This is really powerful information that we can use in order to send the right message to the right user at the right time. So let's see a few examples of what we can do with this. So when we're building a campaign, we can first select who the audience of the campaign will be. So we can target everyone in the organization, or we can choose specific groups, whether that's SharePoint groups or use a segment like department or office, country, and so on. Or we can base our selection on user behavior. So you might want to target new users who are logging into the portal or visiting a specific site or page for the first time. Or you might want to target inactive users who haven't visited the portal or a specific site in a while. You might want to send them an email to ask them for some kind of feedback and find out what their challenges might be. Or send them a newsletter maybe with links to some news articles to try to get them engaged. Or you might want to target engaged users. So users who already viewed a specific page or a specific campaign, or who already responded to a previous campaign. Now you can select the channel. so how you want to send this campaign. In-app messages that we have here can be really useful. These are messages that are shown on top of the SharePoint page, and this is a really useful way to communicate with users because it means that you're showing them messages while they're already browsing through the portal, which means that you can send them messages that are really relevant to what they're doing at that moment. And you also know that you're not bothering the user while they're doing something else because they're already in the portal. Next, you can choose text and design. So this is the text and design of the message as well as the call to action. So for example, if we go down to call to action, we can show them OK and cancel buttons, or we can add RSVP buttons. If we're using the message to invite users to an event, then RSVP buttons are pretty useful. And what we can do then is to create a follow-up campaign to this as well. So in our follow-up campaign, we can target users who RSVP'd maybe, and then we can ask them if they're able to confirm. Or we can target users who clicked yes and send them an email with more details about the event or with a reminder for the event. We can also use this for ratings. This can be a really useful way to get feedback from users. So whether that's a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or a 1 to 10 rating, or a 3 buttons rating. And so on. You might want more specific information from your users. So in that scenario, you can select open question to ask them for specific feedback, or single choice or multiple choice. And here you can write your options here. And finally, you can select the trigger. So you can schedule this to be shown to the user at a specific time, whether that's, say, 8 a.m. your time or 8 a.m. the user's time, no matter where they're located. Or you can trigger this based on the user's behavior. For example, when they view a specific page for a specific amount of time, or if they view a campaign, or when they're performing a search, or when they're viewing a search results page, if they're about to leave, if they're scrolling down. So we have a lot of options here for how to trigger this. And going back here, we have several pre-made campaigns as well. So you can use this for administrative actions. So if you want to notify users that a site was moved or is going to move, you can display a message to them within that site here. And you can also redirect them to the new location. You can also use this for general messages and announcements and greetings. This can be really useful if one of your organization's goals is to reduce the number of email interactions between employees. So here you can send a message to users within SharePoint instead of via email. So you could use this to send a birthday greeting if users have that information in their profiles, or to send general announcements or event invites and so on. And this can be this can also be really useful to get feedback from users. We have a lot of information about search, for example, but we can supplement that by getting first-hand feedback from the actual users. If we ask them a question right after they performed a search, then we can get really valuable feedback about their experience, which they may not really remember if we ask them the same question during their next visit or the next month or week. If we use search as an example, we can ask a user right after they click on a search result, was this result useful? Or if the user is spending a lot of time viewing the search results page, we can ask what they're looking for. We can ask them the same question if we see that the user is performing a few consecutive searches without clicking on any results. So this enables us to get really timely feedback from our users that we can then use in order to improve user experience and ultimately to improve the portal. And we've just looked at a few examples here, but there's a lot you can do with this tool. And the idea is to use this to further engage users based on the information captured by Cardiolog Analytics. And now we have a few minutes to answer any questions that you might have. So if you do have a question, please feel free to write it in the chat box in the GoToWebinar panel. I'll give everyone a minute to do that. And while you're thinking about your questions, I want to take a moment to note that for those customers who do decide to move to SaaS, we do offer support around in terms of training. So we do offer training programs for both end users and administrators. And we also offer consulting services for both on-prem and SaaS customers to provide a more thorough understanding of how to determine what your goals are around SharePoint and analytics, and what your metrics, what kind of metrics you should be looking at to measure those goals, and of course what actions you can take based on the data you see. So now I'm gonna take a minute to let you guys write any questions. All right, so I see a few questions coming through. The first question I see here is, can Cardiolog SaaS track on-prem SharePoint installations? So the answer to this is yes. So our Cardiolog SaaS solution can be used to track SharePoint 2016 and 2013, as well as Yammer, and obviously Office 365. I see another question here. What is the licensing model and how does the pricing compare to on-prem? So licensing for SaaS is based on the number of SharePoint users. Anyone who's interested in more information around licensing or pricing, please reach out to your account manager who will be able to provide you with more details around that. And that's all we have time for right now. So if we didn't get to your question, we will get in touch with you via email. And if you think of any other questions that you didn't get to ask, please feel free to send those through to your account manager. Thanks for your time.
Perfect. Thanks, Ruby. As Ruby just mentioned, if there are any questions or any queries that you have that we didn't get a chance to cover during the webinar, please get in touch with me and I'll be happy to answer them. Thanks so much for joining.